Thank you for joining us today. I'm Frank Delaney. I'm the Managing Director of Perseverance Theater, and today we're talking with Jared Michael Delaney, the playwright for Voyager One, Erin Tripp, who is playing Sarah in Voyager One, and Kelsey Riker, who is voice. I believe that's just, you're just called voice, right?
The voice.
Yeah.
The voice.
Yeah.
In formal situations.
Yeah.
Use the article.
And we're going to be talking a little bit about Voyager One, some of the thinking that went behind it, some of the themes, and we'll just see where it takes us. So the first thing that I'd like to ask, and this is for you, Jared, is what inspired you to write Voyager One?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for asking. Thanks for having me here. What had happened was I happened to read two different articles that came up about the same time in I think the New York Times and somewhere else. But one was about how the Voyager One satellite, it was not a satellite, but spacecraft rather, had left the solar system. And it was the first man-made object in interstellar space. And that if nothing gets in its way, doesn't hit something or something doesn't hit it, that on its current trajectory it won't even reach another solar system, another star, for 40,000 years.
40,000 years.
40,000 years, yeah. And I was sort of struck just by the enormity of that number. And then I also happened to read an article about, the article was about how we tend to associate one person, one name, with a particular movement. So for example, like if I were to say Elizabethan drama, you would say
Shakespeare.
Right, or if you say marching babies, you would say John Philip Sousa, right? So the article is asking the question, when we look back at rock and roll in 500 years, what's the one name we're going to associate with it? And the author is a guy named Chuck Klosterman, who's a really quite a good cultural critic and music writer. He takes a bunch of candidates, he said like the Beatles and the Stones and Elvis and Dylan and Aretha Franklin and like some others, and he makes the case for them, but then says, here's why it's not going to be them. And he came down on that he thinks 500 years from now, the one name we'll associate with rock and roll is Chuck Berry.
Interesting.
And he lists a number of reasons for that, his songwriting and his showmanship and so on and so on. But one of the primary things that he listed was the fact that Chuck Berry's song Johnny Be Good is the only rock and roll song on the Golden Record. And the Golden Record is an object on Voyager One, as we know, and that is a collection of music and sounds and greetings and images that are on Voyager One in the event that someone finds it.
Some other species or intelligence or
some other who knows?
Yeah.
Right. And the fact that Johnny Be Good is out there spinning into infinity, I found really profound in some way that's sort of hard to articulate. So reading those two articles in conjunction with each other got my mind spinning, and this play as a result of that thought process.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see the extrapolation of those ideas in the script. I also want to comment. You went a little bit interstellar DJ there, like late night interstellar DJ, spinning into infinity.
Yes, yeah. I always really wanted to just be a radio DJ.
Yeah, I can see that. I've always gotten that sense from you. So since we were talking about the Golden Record, I'd like to open this up to anybody who wants to answer this, but if you were to, or if we as a society decide to create a new Golden Record, what lessons or artifacts or culturally significant pieces do you think should be included? For interest of brevity, no more than 3, minimum of 1.
Whoa, this is tough. We got this question sort of the other day in our interview. Erin and I were interviewed on the radio the other day.
3 is better than 1.
3 is better than 1. Yeah, 3 is better than 1. So I would say if I could sort of include anything, I would include, I'm going to revise my answer that I gave the other day. I would put David Bowie's Heroes on that.
Okay.
I'm a big Bowie guy. And I would probably put, can I have the whole complete works of Shakespeare? Or can I only have like a play?
Well, it's usually put in one book, you know?
Yeah, it's really only one book. I
Yeah.
wouldn't completely watch Shakespeare on there. And then, what else? Like, maybe, I feel like so nerdy saying this, but like maybe the film of Citizen Kane.
Okay. I mean, that is very, very film nerd of you.
It is. I do genuinely love that movie.
The whole exercise is in and of itself a little bit nerdy.
It is a
so,
little nerdy, yeah.
We'll go with that.
Let's see what these two got. I want to hear what these two have to say.
Well, okay, so we talk a lot about music, but looking at the list of languages that are on there, I think that there's not enough, I don't want to have a broken record, but indigenous languages on there. Like I would love to see some Alaska Native or Lower 48 or even like world indigenous languages, and same with music. It seemed like the music that was on it was indigenous was like flutes and things like that are not like things that people usually already think about with Native people, but I think contemporary Native music would be good. Yeah, so those are the two.
And so you're going to reserve your third one to see what Kelsey.
I gotta see what else.
Do you want to say to play Voyager One?
Well,
Do you want to
obviously.
include that on the Golden
Well, because I think that would be meta, and I think that's perfect, because they'll get it, and they'll be like, whoa, this is about the other ones.
That's it.
See?
That's it.
There you go. There you go.
Wow. This question's blowing my mind a little bit. Okay, I love the William Shakespeare one. I would say definitely more indigenous languages. But besides those, my mind went to, because it must exist, a recording, like a visual recording of the original Broadway cast of West Side Story.
Wow.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that would be my representation of American musical theater.
Yeah.
Which is my nerd side showing. I also want like the flag of progress, which is a newer pride flag.
Yeah, you talk a little bit about that because I don't know that everyone knows.
So that I think was like officially coined in 2019. It was a Philly, I think it's a Philly-based artist actually.
I think that's right.
That it has the six stripes that we're used to. And then it has a triangle.
It's like a V.
Yeah, and it points forward to show progress. Yes, and the triangle is, I think it's black or brown in the center.
I think it's brown.
To put forth our black siblings and queer people of color, and then has pink and blue outlining the triangle for our trans sibling. So.
And I think that's really interesting because when we talk about what was on the original gold record, right? Those items undeniably have had a major impact on American society up to that point, and are probably still affecting us to this day. But our point of view on what is important and socially relevant and culturally relevant has changed significantly since 1976, 77, when this was all going on, to now. And so I wonder if we're not thinking maybe too limited. Maybe there are other avenues of expression or media or culturally significant things that we haven't thought to consider yet.
I think that's very accurate. I mean, civilization, I think we would all do well to remember that civilization is an evolving animal, right? And so it's constantly changing, and sometimes it's for the better, and sometimes it's not. So yeah, the sheer breadth of it, I think, is sometimes hard for us to get our heads around. So I think that's a great point to make, yeah, for sure.
And to be able to narrow it all down into like this single thing is just very overwhelming because there is so much.
There is so much, yeah, there is so much. And making those decisions are, I don't know how they did it the first time, really, right? You know, I mean.
One rock song? Come
Good
on.
point.
And it's a great rock song.
It's
Yeah.
very
But I don't know if I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's interesting too with what you were saying about indigenous and native music. Flutes and things are something that comes up like stereotypically when we think about that. But I think all of us here know that the breadth of indigenous music is so much wider than that, and so much. I don't want to say interesting. That's not the right word. But there's a lot more to it than that.
Intricacies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's more varied than.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, how do you? We all, each of us as individuals contain so much. We all contain multitudes. How do we pare down the multitudes of multitudes
Right.
into
I
what
think
is?
we just need to send out hundreds of Voyagers, and it'll just all have like these. They'll be themed.
And in every direction.
In
just
every
kinda
direction.
set it off.
Themed, yeah, like a party.
I like
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And I wonder too, and you might know about this because you've done more research on it than I have. Were they limited to? Was there a technological limitation at the time, like a storage size, that we wouldn't have these days?
Yeah, that's a great point. There was. They could only fit so much because the golden record. There is two of them. There's a Voyager One and a Voyager Two. Each have a copy of the same thing. So the golden record is limited in its physical capacity of what it can contain. So they can only put on so much, and there are images, music, language, greetings. There's mathematics on there. So yeah, they can only put on so much. Now, you know, with the capacity for digital files and things of that nature, it's easy with the whole internet on it, I suppose, if you wanted to, like really, you know, and say this is the whole of who we are, the good and the bad.
Wow.
Yep.
You know, I don't know if you want to look at Facebook, but here it is. And now it's Meta.
Yeah, maybe we won't
You
talk
want to
about
talk
it.
about what Meta is? Anyway, we won't talk about it. We're not here for social.
Different episode.
So that does bring me to another thought question, and I'll open this up to the entire group too. Is, what's the importance of retaining knowledge or culture or history as we move into the future? How important is it to retain all of that stuff, and particularly as we're looking at some of the more progressive movements who are saying that we need to shed things that have not served us in the past or haven't served us in the way maybe we thought. And as we're looking forward, does Shakespeare retain its same value that I learned in high school in the 80s? Is that the same now, and does it have the same value as we go forward? Not limited to Shakespeare, but
Well, sure. Does anybody want to?
I would say my initial thought is yes, it is important. My first thought is the cliche of you can't know where you're going until you know where you've been. And I think right now we're seeing that a lot in theater, in politics, in life, decolonizing, re-indigenizing spaces, and I don't think you can learn those ideas without looking back at the thousands of years, before we are sitting here right now, and learning and acknowledging and yeah, maybe taking Shakespeare and saying, yes, this is great, and then taking other ideas and saying,
This is also good.
this is, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think that, if you don't, this is my own personal opinion, but if you kind of try to shed, let us say, things of the past, I don't know that actually serves, this is my opinion, I don't know if it serves anything, because you can't build going forward if you don't understand what was before. And I also think it's important, in my opinion, to own the history, right? And to say, this is what it was, good or bad, this is what it was. And if we want to all collectively be better than we were before, if we don't know what was problematic, then how do we know we're not doomed to repeat that? Or whatever metaphor you want to use. So I do think it's important. But having said that, that doesn't mean, like the value of Shakespeare, we keep using that example, but the value of Shakespeare doesn't mean that Shakespeare outweighs the value of something else. You know, it is more about, I think, how we find the equilibrium of these things, where one thing is a little bit more weighted than the other. Let's find. It doesn't mean this thing has less value, but it doesn't mean this thing shouldn't have an equal value. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's my take on that.
And I would say also adding to that is that where we are now is built on everything that came before. So there's really no true way to shed it because it's so intertwined with who we are, even thousands and thousands of years. And, you know, like what you're talking about, like indigenous knowledge and practices, those are things from the past that carry forward and help us now too. So there's no true way, I think, to shed the past.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this next question that I have for you is probably the most fun question that I have. We've gotten into some pretty serious.
Take your jacket off.
Deep water.
This is still fairly serious stuff, but so earliest sci-fi, we go back to Asimov and Bradbury and those folks portrayed the 2000s as the future, right? The future. And so a Jetson-esque world that science has advanced our lives farther than ever before. Case in point, my tablet right here that I'm holding on to for dear life. Do you believe we're living now in this future that those people imagined? And what are the indications we can observe in our everyday life that we've progressed as a species?
I would say we have not.
Okay, great. Run with that. Let's see.
Yeah. So, so like if we take that idea, like if we look at our Bradburys, for example, or our Robert Heinleins, or nerdy science fiction people like Asimov, I think that they thought by the time 2021 rolled around, a number of things would already be eliminated or would already be here, like flying cars and colonies on the moon and things of this sort. I think for me, this might not be true, but this is my opinion. When you look at the difference, like let us say that we look at film as an example, right? Okay. So if you look at the difference between films from the earliest days of film, or let's say like 1939, Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz, etc. That golden age, right? If you go from there to let's say like 75, 40 years of filmmaking, right? There's a marked difference between how they looked, how they shot, how they feel, to how they are now, right? I think if you do the same thing from there to now, the difference is not as marked. The technology is different. We use digital stuff, but I feel like dialogue is mostly the same. I feel like when you look at a world from 1976 versus the world today, it doesn't look wholly that different.
We're still having a lot of the same conversations and the same arguments.
The same conversations, the same squabbles, the same political problems, the same energy problems. They had an energy crisis in 1970s. You know, like, so all these things. So I think that we have not progressed. These things, right, and these things that we carry around with us like addictive crack, right, that thing, that's certainly different. And the fact that we are able to, you know, with this access the history of the world and every bit of information you ever wanted on this, that's remarkable.
And yet I mostly use it to look at pictures of cats.
And like, this is still just a table. Those lights still run on electricity that we generate, you know, like, so there are a lot of things that I think have not progressed in that way. I feel like scientific advancement has not moved forward collectively on the whole. It has moved forward in very particular ways, in my opinion. That's my take.
Chelsea, Aaron?
Well, it's interesting if you put aside the sci-fi aspect and the technology. If you read books from like decades ago, like over 100 years ago, sometimes the books you'll be like, wow, they're literally the same. Like we have not changed. But like we have the same conversations and issues and all this stuff, but now we have technology, so like we are interacting with things and with each other in a very different way. It is fun to see like what people predicted in sci-fi and what it looks like now and like what's not the same. But I remember, I think maybe it was you talked about early in the process, at some point talking about technology and science and future just philosophizing what it will be. So like, because we can never really know, because we're always just at this point, and the scope of our imagination really only can go to what we already know exists. Like talking to my dad was like, when he heard about cell, like waves, for cellular, he was like, that sounds nuts.
Right.
I don't know what that is.
Right.
So it's just, we're limited.
Yeah.
And I think we really, at least I saw evidence of that when we were creating this world.
Mm-hmm.
You could kind of let your mind run amok, but I felt really limited. I'm like, well, because I don't really understand how technology works. Like, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a mathematician. I don't know, like, what is the realm of possibilities? And then you look back to a Jetsons type world, that it's the same thing, they're just, it's your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
But in the ways that they imagine things, it was not necessarily what we have in our hands right now.
Right.
So so if they weren't thinking of that, what am I not thinking, like little old me, what am I not thinking of that will happen in the next 30, 50, 100 years? That will just completely blow my mind.
I think to that point exactly, one of the giants of 20th century science fiction is Arthur C. Clarke, right?
Mm-hmm.
2001, among other things. And one of his famous quotes is, he said, any technology that is sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic, right? And I don't think that we're there yet. I don't think it's indistinguishable from magic, but that's something I think that those writers speculated would happen. And which I think what Voyager One does is like, when the voice says, can I come with you? And how can the voice do that? Well, it doesn't matter. It's some kind of technological thing, but it doesn't matter what it is. It could be magic.
You don't need to know the how.
It doesn't matter. All that matters is that it can happen.
We like to imagine that I had a little motorcycle and Kelsey got into a little buggy on the side and I just
cruising through the cosmos?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a good visual. It's pretty fun.
I like it.
So the sequel to Voyager One is the
It's a
AI
buddy comedy.
and Sarah.
Oh,
buddy.
yeah.
It's a buddy comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start working
History will
on
say
that.
they were roommates,
Yeah. You heard it here first.
Kind of like an odd couple bosom buddies.
Yeah. We get into all kinds of hijinks, all kinds of misadventures.
yeah. Actually, I would watch that.
I would too. Well, okay.
Of course, it's a shot.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I think this is probably going to be my last question, and it's kind of a big one. And it's a make your guess. Whatever is it? Where do you see humanity in 2,000 years? And that's pretty open-ended, so take it however you wish. And I see a lot of eager eyes to answer that question.
It's too far for me to go.
I will say here. I don't know. In 2,000 years, I hope. Well, I'll say this. I hope one that we're all still here. I hope that there is still.
Well, I mean, we probably won't.
Well, we won't be.
I hope I'm still here.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't want
We won't be here, but I hope we as a species are here, that we have solved some pressing issues, like climate change, for example, and we haven't foolishly exterminated ourselves and every other living thing on the planet. But having said that, I do believe that life endures. Life finds a way to continue. I mean, if we've learned nothing from Jurassic Park, we've learned that life finds a way.
So that classic documentary.
The classic documentary, man, so ahead of its time. So I hope that we're still here, and I hope that we have solved some of those problems. And I hope that we have, I don't know, I'd like to think that maybe we will have found something else, someone else.
Maybe reach some of the goals that we've talked about tonight.
Indeed.
Yeah.
There you go. That's my 2 cents.
Erin, Kelsey?
I waver between being like, yeah, we're on our way out. Depending on the day, and then like, well, stop. Like, because I think this goes back to what I'm talking about, we can only imagine from our point. And 2,000 years is a long time, and technology moves like this, like super, super fast. And so I have like no idea, but like I do hope that like we have, I think, moved to a balance with having a relationship with the earth and the planet, and like being a reciprocal relationship, because I think right now we are so out of sync, and there's like a lot that has been lost, and that we can still, you know, have whatever advancements, but that it's all in balance. So that's what I hope for.
Well, we think this play is all about hope, so.
That's true.
We do.
That's a big question. I have similar hopes, similar fears. And I will just say, I think I want people to have the option to talk to dogs.
Ooh.
Okay.
If they so choose.
Only dogs?
Well,
That's
I
a
think a horse
little.
would be good.
I feel like you're being a little exclusionary. Just dogs.
Well,
What if I want to talk to a dolphin?
no.
No.
I mean, yes. I feel like, for some reason, I feel like it would start with dogs. Maybe it would start with some kind of monkey, though.
I mean,
I
maybe, I can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that.
They can sign.
They can sign,
Can sign.
I just,
Have you seen any of the, I've recently gotten sucked into TikTok, and they have these maps with programs.
Yes.
They do.
Where cats and dogs are like, I want to
Yes.
go outside, and
Yeah.
I want to do this, and I want to do that. Yeah.
So.
big fan. Big fan. I have so many hopes for humanity, but I'm picturing like Doug in Up. Anyone?
Yeah.
Where he can just tell you that he loves you.
Aww.
And if a dolphin wants to come up to shore and be like, I love you, why are you here? Go away.
Yeah.
I've actually heard dolphins aren't very nice.
Right.
So the pretty ones usually are not nice.
Right, well, that's been.
They're real arrogant. They're like, I'm a dolphin, and I'm way cooler than
If we
you.
were gonna add talking animals, I want to talk to a raven, because
Yo, let's
they're
talk
so
to ravens.
smart.
Mhm.
Actually, this summer I was trying to befriend some ravens, because I heard that if you feed them regularly and they like get to know
They'll bring you
they'll
gifts.
bring you gifts.
Yeah. They bring you little.
And they'll like take care of you, because I saw somebody said like their daughter would accidentally drop her, she's like little, you know. And then so the raven would follow her around, and they like left their house to go on a hike, and he had dropped his like camera lens, and so the raven brought it back home for him. So, you know, that's all I want.
There you go.
I think those are all very noble and laudable goals. And anyone who's dealt with the ravens here in Juneau knows exactly how smart they are. Thank you so much, Jared,
Thank you
for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Erin and Kelsey, thank you for staying late. Please come out and see Perseverance Theater's return to live in-person theater with Voyager One, featuring Erin Tripp and Kelsey Riker, and we will see you in the theater.
See you in the theater. That's a wrap.